So there's a bit of a trap out there, and I don't want you to fall for this. I don't want you to buy the wrong smartwatch. And I'm gonna say that of all the times you could buy a smartwatch, buying one right now, you have the highest probability of buying the wrong one. And so I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But on this channel, I've reviewed a ton of smartwatches, all different kinds from different brands, different operating systems, and I've always been honest with you guys. I told you which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like, and helped you decide which ones were the right one to buy. But the fact is, a lot of those highly endorsed watches that I really liked on this channel are a terrible purchase right now. And this doesn't mean I lied, this doesn't mean I was wrong at the time, but we now have some new information. We have a new update coming out that is going to completely change the landscape of smartwatches. And with this, you're gonna have a lot of those really great smartwatches becoming completely obsolete and would therefore be a really bad purchase. So in this video, I wanna explain what this update is, how it's going to change smartwatches, and of course, which smartwatches you really should be avoiding buying right now. So with that being said, let's first start off with what the landscape is right now, and then we'll talk about how it's going to change. So when you're looking at smartwatches right now, you have several different types of smartwatch. You've got the hybrid watches, you've got the fitness watches, you've got the general utility ones, which is really what most of this video is going to be about. And if you have an iPhone, an Apple Watch is the obvious choice. It does a lot, it's very functional, integrates really well, overall a great buy. Now, if you're looking at a fitness watch, of course, you've got Garmin and Polar, and all of those are still a really solid buy as well. But if you have an Android phone and you're looking for really the equivalent of an Apple Watch, you kind of have three main brands to look at. So the first one, you can look at the Samsung watches. For a while, these are really one of my favorites out there because they're so functional. As you can see right here, you have that nice rotating bezel, a really nice looking watch, very powerful, great battery life, and overall, a solid buy. Secondly, you can get a Fitbit device, and there are a lot of Fitbit watches out there. These are going to be really giving you a nice Fitbit ecosystem, and they also look like really nice watches, great display, pretty good battery life, and they do have their own app store as well. And then the third option is anything with a WearOS operating system, which could be the Fossil Gen 5, the G-Shock watch that just came out, it could be the TIC watches, it could be Suunto watches. There's a lot of watches that run WearOS, and all three of these, Fitbit, Samsung, and WearOS, are all great options. But the problem is that between them, there was always a limit in the App Store. The apps that were being developed were not really that great. They at least were not comparable to what we saw on the Apple Watch. And the reason for this was because if you were going to make an app that worked with any iPhone users, you would just make it for the Apple Watch. Now, if you wanted to do that with an Android, you had to choose. Did you want to make that for Samsung, for WearOS, for Fitbit, or maybe for a different one like Garmin? And this kind of made it so that there was a much slimmer selection on the apps. Now, fortunately, this new update is really going to help that a lot. Instead of having all these different operating systems, we're kind of merging everything into one. So recently, you might have heard that Google bought Fitbit. So those two are now married up. But with this new one, we actually have Google is partnering with Samsung on the new WearOS 3. That's what they're calling this. WearOS 3 is going to be the update, but as I mentioned, not all of these old watches are going to get this update. So let's talk a little bit more about what this update is actually going to bring. As you can see here, we had some images from before that Google actually showed during the little event recently, and you can see that we're seeing a lot of the stuff from Samsung, from Fitbit, and from Google kind of all merged together, which honestly I think is a really exciting positive there. So on this new operating system, you'll see that some of the big positives we're getting, of course, we have a lot of the fundamental Google stuff like the Assistant, Google Pay, all types of things like that that are really nice to have that maybe we missed having on the Samsung watches. Similarly, you can look and we're seeing a lot of the stuff from Samsung as well, and in this image here, you're even seeing some stuff from Fitbit, such as like their little active minutes that they're gonna show, and I think the combination of all of these is going to make a really strong Apple competitor. But the drawback here is that, like I said, a lot of the previous watches weren't going to get that. And this is creating something known as the Osborne Effect. So Osborne was a company that made computers, and their issue, when they ended up going bankrupt, was that they announced a computer and then they waited an entire year until it was actually available. So what happened during that year was nobody bought their model that actually was for sale, and rather people even canceled their orders because they wanted that new one. But it wasn't even for another year until they could even get that. And so they ended up really hurting themselves. And that's something that a lot of companies end up doing. And I think that's kind of what we're gonna end up seeing here. So what do I mean by that? Well, WearOS 3 is an exciting option. It really offers a lot, and it's enticing people to not buy the old models because, of course, the old models, a lot of them, like I said, are not getting that update. So why would you buy an old one when you could wait for the new one? But the catch is, the new ones aren't necessarily going to come out for a little while. Samsung's coming out with the one in a couple weeks, but after that, we don't know when the other ones are coming out. And the previous ones are not getting the update. Now, the title of this video is Don't Buy the Wrong Smartwatch. So which one is the wrong smartwatch? Well, let's go brand by brand. Out of those three brands, Samsung, Fitbit, and WearOS, let's start off with Samsung. Now, the Samsung devices that I really heavily endorsed on this channel that I thought were fantastic purchases were the Galaxy Watch 3 and the Galaxy Watch Active 2. Both of them were fantastic devices, really among the best on the market at the time. But the downside now is that they're not getting the update. In fact, no Samsung watches are getting this WearOS 3 update, which is really a big negative. If you recently bought this, you're going to be kind of disappointed to know that you're not going to get access to this new operating system and a lot of the new functionality. But the good news is, if you bought this recently, within the past year, then you don't really have to worry because Samsung did promise several years of support. So if you have it now, at the very least, you should be getting support for the next year or two. The downside, however, is though, a lot of the apps on this operating system probably won't be getting updated. If you were, say, Strava or Spotify, why would you be updating an app on an antiquated and outdated operating system when you could be focusing on making a better app for WearOS 3? That's my opinion. I can't guarantee that's what's going to happen, but I really have a feeling that the apps on this watch are really going to start to fall behind. So the first watch not to buy is really any Samsung watch. Fortunately, Fitbit is in a slightly different category in my mind, so as far as I know, no Fitbit devices are getting this update either. But the good thing is, at least when I'm using Fitbit devices, I found that I don't rely as heavily on apps. They're definitely more for a fitness-oriented crowd, people that are looking to lose weight, get more active, and really track like their sleep and stuff like that. And granted, you can do all of that on Samsung watches as well, but I just found that from my experience, most people buying Fitbits are less interested in a lot of the peripheral apps and functionality that a Samsung user might really be looking for. So Fitbit watches, I would still say, are definitely not a good purchase right now, but if you have one, again, Fitbit kind of has its own little ecosystem, and it's not necessarily the worst purchase out there. Then we get to WearOS, and this is kind of divided into two crowds. One of them is the old the old chip on here, the Snapdragon 3100, which honestly most devices are using. Almost every single WearOS watch out there is using the old one, which actually came out, I think, almost 3 years ago now. And only a couple are using the brand new chip that Snapdragon just announced a year ago, the 4100. Now, of these two, basically anything that is using an older chip, the 2100 or the 3100, is not getting the update, and is therefore a terrible purchase. Do not buy any of those, and these include things like the Fossil Gen 5, we've got one from Citizen, we've got the Suunto 7, like a lot of different devices out there, pretty much every single Wear OS watch, except for two. The only two Wear OS watches that have that new 4100 chip are both from TicWatch. So if you have the TicWatch E3, as I have right here, the more budget-friendly one, or the TicWatch Pro 3, both of those have that new chip on there and will be getting the update. So that's a very positive thing. Basically, if you're buying a smartwatch right now and you really don't want to wait, those are the only two options that I would really recommend, the TicWatch E3 and the TicWatch Pro 3. But unfortunately, they won't be getting the update until mid to late 2022. That's what Google said, at least. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though, because they work perfectly fine now. If you don't get the update for a year, if anything, maybe that means that Google's going to work out some bugs. I think that's honestly not a big negative, and I would probably still recommend these two watches. But out of all the rest of the watches that I had, really, like anything from Samsung, Fitbit, or Wear OS, for the most part, is not a good buy. Of course, if you're looking for a hybrid watch, those are still a fantastic buy. Garmin watches, Polar watches should be completely unchanged. All those are still going to be a great buy. And of course, any little fitness tracking bands are still a great buy as well. So I hope this video helped you. I really hope to save you guys from making a big purchase on a smartwatch right now and buying, say, like the Galaxy Watch 3 for $400 and then realizing that you're not going to get this really important update. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.